So good morning, everybody. Before we talk about finance, blockchain, I want to take you a lot of years back. So I want you to imagine that we are in a medieval village, and I have 5 coins, and I have someone who wants to sell a horse. So I decide to buy the horse. We make a deal, and I tell him, I have 5 coins. I want to get your horse. He wants to get rid of it because it's sick. He never tells me. So we end up meeting and doing the transaction. We exchange things of value for both of us. When we go to the exchange, I tell him, actually, I don't have 5 coins, I have 3, so I give you 3 coins. He needs the money, he doesn't need the horse, so he gives me the horse. The horse dies in a few days. I will never do a transaction with him, and he will never do a transaction with me. So that's how transactions of value used to take place before. Then we became a little bit more elaborate, and we had accountants and bankers in the middle. So let's say this transaction was taking place a few decades later. I have a banker, he has a ledger. I have my 5 coins in the bank, and then he wants to sell the horse. I go to the bank, I said I need a medical certificate for the horse. So we come up with a transaction. 5 coins in the bank. The banker says, OK, you can do the transaction. Actually, I need 2 coins, one for the medical certificate and one for actually doing the transaction. It's everything recorded in a book. Nobody can change it unless the banker has a second book and does his own thing. But there is a level of trust, and you can actually do the transaction and move on. And then we came into a different era, into a digitization era, where everything is digitalized. A transaction will take place on the internet. You have large corporations and banks that will sit in the middle. And the horse and the coins is a very simple transaction that everybody can actually understand. And I would go on the internet, I would go on Amazon, and I would say, I pay 5 coins now, and I get the horse delivered to my house. I don't know if the horse is fine or not. I pay, the middleman gets a bit of that money, they keep it for themselves, and maybe I paid with a credit card that I never intend to pay off. So my bank is actually exposed. I'm not going to pay the $5. So we come into this digital world, and all these transactions and the volume of transactions that is taking place is actually bigger and larger. And the complexity of transactions and how money is exchanged, how value is exchanged is becoming much different. And then we have blockchain. We have this great new technology coming in, whereby if I take back my example of the horse and the coins, you will have a chain of information in the system which is actually secure. It cannot be manipulated. So I can actually see when the horse was born, his health history, and so on. And the seller can actually see if I have the $5, if I can actually pay for that. And I cannot manipulate it, and he cannot go back and manipulate anything. And the moment we do the transaction, without the middleman to take the $2 for the health certificate or the bank charges, the block is actually updated. And this is what is blockchain. And that's basically how it starts and how we think it will change the way that we exchange value between us. So everything is trusted. And if you look at it in an ideal world, and you hear a lot of the blockchain speeches and papers that are going around, they talk about a world without banks, without the middleman. So you take out the middleman, and you lower your cost, and you increase the trust between transactions. They will be done faster, more securely, and I can actually do peer-to-peer. I want something from China, I will get rid of all the letter of credits, everything in the middle, and I will do the transaction, and the goods will arrive possibly faster without a lot of cost. So this is the idealistic idea of how blockchain will work. If I look at it in terms of finance, and I get out of the horse and the coins now, is that if I go and buy something, potentially, if there is a bank in the middle, they can lower all their costs. If you have this chain of information that will follow a transaction, you can actually take a lot of the reconciliations and the complexity which is going through. And it's quite interesting, and you can see that there's a lot of innovative ideas around and a lot of research about trade finance, cross-border payments, smart contracts, very, very interesting ideas that are going around. But is it really becoming, is it taking over as we see it now? So I think the actual question here is, how do you scale it? Is this technology scalable? Can you actually live in a world where you're on your own and you can transact with no middlemen? And you go back to peer-to-peer, you do that transaction on the coins and the horse without anybody in the middle. And I would say that's a big question, scalability. This is the question. If we look at statistics and you look at the Bitcoin technology, Bitcoin actually processes 4.6 transactions per second. Visa processes 17,000 transactions per second, which is about 150 million transactions per day. So although the blockchain is exciting, it's a new technology, we still have a long way to go before we say that it actually takes over finance and we move into the ideal world where the cost and the complexity goes out. When you do a blockchain transaction, you are on an open ledger. Everything is visible. It's visible to your peer with whom you will do the transaction, and it sits on a multiple infrastructures, so it's open. And basically, every time you do something, the whole chain of transactions, the whole history is updated, and it takes time to update it. So every time you have an update, it has to update everything. And that's how it becomes secure and trusted, and that's the whole concept of the technology. So taking this scalability into mind, it's not going to happen now. It's not going to take over now. You are not going to take out the middleman now, and that's my view. This is a very interesting technology, and obviously it will take over at some point in time. We saw how internet took over. We have the internet of information now. Everything is connected. I call my daughter in London, and at the same time I call my son in Luxembourg when I'm in Germany. So I have this information and the connectivity. And then possibly this will happen. You can actually transact in that way, the same way you share information. But it needs time. It's not ready to take over as we speak now. There is a lot of research that needs before we actually see real use cases and we see the value chain of blockchain technology. But just to end, it doesn't need to be ignored. It shouldn't be ignored. It will take over, but it will take time. Thank you.